Quick question, and answer it honestly. How long do you have to serve before you qualify for a VA loan? And if you chose 90 days, that's correct. And then you can take advantage of 0% down and rates lower than regular mortgage rates. And here's what's even crazier. According to Realtor.com, only 3 out of 10 veterans know they can buy a home with 0% down. And in 2026, there's some VA changes that have happened. The loan limits have changed, for example. And in my opinion, the window to take advantage of this is better right now than it has been in years. And it has to do with this graph right here, which we'll talk about later. Now, I know this because mortgage is all I do all day long, helping over 500 families. So again, this isn't theory. So I'm breaking down the 3 biggest VA changes this year and what they mean for your buying power. So if you're active duty or a veteran wanting to learn about the VA loan, you're gonna wanna pay attention. And real quick, if you're not even sure if you're ready to buy, I made this free homebuyer readiness quiz. It takes less than 30 seconds to find out if you're ready. And then if you're not ready, it sends you customized videos on how to get ready to go from a C to a B to an A. It takes less than 30 seconds. It's my gift to you and it's completely free. Check it out, the link down below. So in 2026, there's a shift happening in the housing market. There's 47% more sellers than buyers, which means VA offers are getting accepted faster. You might be thinking, wait, why would the sellers even care if it's a VA loan? Like, they're gonna get the money, right? And here's what most people don't know. It was never the sellers. It's actually the listing agent that have a problem with VA loans because they have this bad reputation that VA appraisals kill deals all the time and the property requirements are a nightmare. Between you and I, it's not. And 0% down, it means that the buyer isn't serious. And that's old news, right? Because, and in my opinion, and this is why the VA loan is a superpower right now. Because in the past, when there was multiple offers on the table, the listing agent would advise the sellers, hey, take the safest offer. And sometimes it was a cash offer, or maybe it was a higher down payment offer. Maybe it was 20% down. And that's why I want to talk one of the biggest changes, which is the 90-day rule, okay? So remember the question I asked at the very beginning of the video, how long do you have to serve before you qualify for a VA loan? And this actually reminds me of Joel, one of my past clients that I met about a year ago. And he just got into the military, right? I met him through a real estate agent, young guy, and he's got his head on straight, which is a really good thing because he's already thinking about buying real estate at a very young age. And he was like, hey, Nathan, I want to, buy my first house. And that way, by the time I get out of the military, I'm going to have 2 to 3 properties. Then I was like, Joel, that's actually called the PCS strategy. And that's something I recommend, especially if someone who wants to, embark on this home ownership journey and buy multiple properties. Really killer strategy that I'll talk about later. And then he was like, cool, like hopefully I can qualify next year and then, we'll get the ball rolling. And I asked him, hey, how long have you been in the military? He's like, yeah, I just passed my 100 days. I'm like, Joel, what are we talking about here? Did you already know that you passed the 90-day rule? And he was like, oh, I didn't know that. So yeah, he actually went through the process and he bought his first house. Obviously there's some steps to go from idea to, getting the keys. And that whole story is all about active duty. And you might be wondering, well, what if you're a veteran or in the reserves? So let's actually break down what that looks like in a table because, it's easier to tell the whole story. So let's talk about veteran. If you've already served, meaning you got out of the military, right? All you had to do was 90 days during the wartime period, and that benefit never expires. Next is gonna be National Guard or reserves. This is a pretty big change too. So let's call it like the weekend warriors that are, making those moves and still protecting our country. And maybe you got deployed as well. 90 days active, and then you're good to go. Obviously, there's still some T's and C's, but generally speaking, you can see 90 days across the board. And just in case you want to dive into the nitty gritty, feel free to screenshot this if you're in the National Guards or reserves. And here's the other thing. I want to make sure this lands. This isn't just for active duty, like I mentioned. If you got out years ago and never used your benefits, it's still yours. So there's no expiration date on it, right? Your DD-214 is basically your golden ticket that a lot of people have just like sitting in their drawer, in a very safe space. So make sure to, 1, keep your DD-214 safe, and then 2, you can actually use that to see if you're eligible. And then here's the other thing that gets very interesting, in my opinion, because it's not just about qualifying, it's about how much you can actually buy, right? And in 2026, that number just went up. And let's talk about change number 2, which is loan limits have gone up. So they just went up, and in most counties, the new baseline is $832,750, okay? So it went from $806,000 and change to 832,750. And in some high cost areas, so think like San Diego, Los Angeles, Orange County, Hawaii, you can go all the way up to 1,250,000, somewhere in that range. Now, here's what's interesting. What's not new, and I think it's still big news, is if you have one VA loan out there, there's no VA loan limit, okay? But wait a minute, didn't we just say there's a VA loan limit? I'm gonna go into that in a few moments, but there's no loan limit if you have one VA loan out there. Meaning, if you can afford and qualify for the payment, some lenders out there will get you a $3 million VA loan with 0% down, which is like crazy if you think about it. Now, most people hear the loan limit increase and think, now cool, big number, whatever. But I actually wanna show you how active duty service members are actually using this. It's called the PCS strategy. And if you're in the military, this might be one of the most valuable things in this entire video. So I wanna show you something awesome, right? This client of mine, she was in the Navy, and her first duty station, guess what? She bought her place using the VA loan, again, while in the military, using 0% down. She lived there for roughly 3 years while fulfilling her billet or her contract at that station. She then moved to a new station, rented out her first home to obviously, cover the cost of the mortgage. And then with her new station, she bought the second home. Guess what? 0% down again. And at the end of her time in the military, she actually had 2 properties, like I mentioned, using her VA loan. And this is basically called bonus entitlement, by the way. So she didn't win the lottery. She didn't have rich parents or anything like that. That's the PCS strategy. And the reason it keeps working in 2026 is basically because the loan limits keep going up and up and up, meaning you can have multiple VA loans at the same time, as long as it fits in with the bonus entitlement equation. So what this means is the buying power on the second house and maybe even the third house potentially just got bigger automatically. But here's the thing, right? None of this really matters, so which is great. And remember, this is the PCS strategy. So if we have that, we obviously need a house, right? Because you can't get a loan if you don't have a house. So for years, this was a real problem with the VA loan. It wasn't really the benefit or the math, right? Because conceptually, if I break down the math, you're like, yeah, this makes sense. It was the reputation of the VA loan, right? And that's why change number 3 is about why this change that's happening right now and basically what you can do today to make sure your VA offer wins. Because again, you need a house to get a VA loan. And before we jump into change number 3, make sure to check out the free homebuyer readiness quiz. It takes less than 30 seconds to figure out if you're ready. And guess what? If you're not ready, I give you customized videos to get ready to go from a C to a B to an A. It's my gift to you, completely free. Check it out in the link down below. So I wanted to talk about the market shift and explain it to it in the simplest way I can. So for years, in 2020 to like 2023, there were so many more buyers than sellers. And it's basically the sellers had all the power. They could pick whoever they wanted. It could be a conventional offer, could be, 20% down, a cash offer, and then all you're left with is the 0% down VA, right? If you think about it, you're like, I'm gonna choose this one. So because the listing agent, the ones representing the sellers, they would see the offer and say, hey, I had a bad experience from 20 years ago or 10 years ago with a VA loan because of all this crazy, VA appraisals kill these deals and closing takes forever. And the buyer has no skin in the game because they're putting 0% down, like all this mumbo jumbo, right? And it gets into the seller's ear and they're like, well, if there's 20 other offers, I'm just gonna accept the safest one. And that's what was happening in the past. But today, the market has flipped. There's actually 47% more sellers than buyers right now. And what this means is the sellers need the buyers. So this changes everything because, like I mentioned, there is more sellers than buyers. So now you have the leverage instead of the sellers having the leverage. Now I want to go one step further, right? So let's say you have a VA offer and then you have a conventional offer or all cash offer. That's great. So if you're the only offer, good to go. But what if there's a situation where there's not multiple offers, but there's 2 offers on the table and it's your offer and the conventional offer or something like that? So the question is, how do you make your VA offer stand out more compared to the conventional offer without having to bid more? And that comprises of 3 things. And that's it. Let's start with number 1. Get fully underwritten, pre-approved, okay? I can't tell you how important this is. Don't just get a pre-qual letter, an actual underwritten approval where a human being at the lender reviews everything, reviews the income, credit, assets, and issues an official, fully underwritten letter, not just a pre-qual, not just a pre-approval, but one above that. That's like the gold standard. And the reason why this is so important is I feel like a lot of people don't understand the concept because they're like, well, I know my finances. I know I can afford this house twice on Sunday, no problems. You know that, but the listing agent doesn't know that. Therefore, when they talk to the sellers, they can't communicate, hey, this pre-approval and this fully underwritten approval, take the fully underwritten because this is more of a guarantee, right? They can't go to bat because they're just gonna see like, oh, well, I just have 2 pre-approval letters and that's it. So that's number 1, get fully underwritten. And number 2 is work with a lender who knows the VA loans like the back of their hand. And I can't stress this enough. This is super important because a listing agent, the one representing the sellers, they might have had a bad VA experience in the past. And they'll look at your offer and immediately ask, well, who's your lender? And if someone they've never heard of, that's a yellow flag. If it's a VA specialist with a great track record of clean closings, because they can look it up, right? That's the conversation starter, in my opinion, that melts away this like myth of VA loans being bad. So that's where you want to have a VA specialist help you and help your offer get accepted as well. Number 3 is understand the appraisal mumbo jumbo up front. That way you can explain that to the listing agent. So that way the sellers aren't scared of the VA appraisals not meeting, minimum property requirements or MPRs. And here's the reality. Most MPRs issues are going to cost like under $1,500 to fix, to be honest with you. It's not even a huge deal. But like everyone freaks out of like, oh, well, I heard this VA appraisal is going to like be a huge issue. I'm like, guys, it costs like $20 to throw some conduit, fix some exposed wiring. It's not too crazy, right? So that's where having somebody to go bat for you and explain, hey, this isn't a huge deal. We're going to be just fine. You know the saying, fear is a mile wide, but an inch deep? Exact concept. Once they actually go through the specifics, it's not a huge deal. Now, here's also where it gets really, really good, in my opinion, because it's not just about the VA offer, right? Getting accepted more easily, which again is a huge benefit. It's the market conditions right now that give the VA buyers a huge weapon that no other loan has, and that's going to be seller credits. With the VA loan, the seller can cover some or all of your standard closing costs, and as the kids say, no cap. And on top of that, they can give you up to 4% of the purchase price in additional concessions, okay? Now, technically, there's like actually not really a limit on seller credits, but that's beyond the scope of this video. But I'm gonna give you a simple example. Let's say it's a $500,000 home. I just like to use that as an example. 4% of that is $20,000. And again, this is happening because in most markets right now, the sellers need your offers and you're there to make that happen. And then on top of that, let's add like an extra, layer of spicy sauce here, okay? You can take those seller credits and use them to buy your rate down for what's called a temporary rate buy down, which you could do for the first year, first 2 years, etc. And let's just call this a 2-1 temporary rate buy down. And I want to walk you through a simple example right now, because again, the sellers do have to agree to this, but because there's more sellers than buyers, this is your opportunity. So let's say your rate is 5.5%. Year 1, you're paying like it's a 3.5% interest rate. Year 2, you pay like it's a 4.5% interest rate. And then year 3 and beyond, your actual rate is 5.5%, as an example. On a $500,000 home, that's nearly 11 grand on savings in the first 2 years, paid for by the sellers. How cool is that? So big picture, while you like furnish the house, you build your emergency fund because again, you're moving and there's unexpected moving expenses. You just wait for rates to drop and then you can refinance in the future, things like that, right? And then that's how the temporary rate buy down works, big picture. Now, one thing I do want to be clear about is the lender still qualifies you on the full highest rate, okay? So this isn't like a way to get into a sneaky home where you can't afford it, but then you do some crazy math and you can afford it. It's supposed to be used to give you some breathing room in a home you already qualify for. So that's the thought there, okay? And then when rates drop and then demand surges, sellers, again, will stop negotiating like pretty much overnight. And the veterans who made a move in 2026 are the ones that are gonna look back and like, wow, I can't believe I got all those seller credits, right? Because all the timing worked out really well. All right, so most veterans either don't know that this benefit exists or that they can even use it. Now you know the truth on that, right? 90 days, 0% down. Now you also know that loan limits have increased, making a PCS strategy even easier to use. And lastly, the market is literally handing VA buyers a ton of leverage right now. That's not normal, so try to take advantage of it if home buying makes sense. All right, so like I always mention, I always try to put everything I know into making the best mortgage educational videos. So if you like this, give it a like, subscribe, and maybe comment what you want to watch next. And by the way, YouTube is recommending this video right over here. I hope to see you there, and I'll catch you in the next one.